Let's cut through the crowd. Tell us how you feel. Let's cue the talent. Let's meet the host. Podcast by George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome back to another podcast by George. These episodes I really like because we've got the doc back in the house. It's Dr. Stephen W. Schmidt, the guy that's known as Dr. Politics Around the World, and the guy that literally wrote the book, American Government and Politics Today, used in college classrooms across America, and a frequent guest on the PBG, and we're just delighted to have him back on the show. Doc, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We got a ton of topics to get to today. There's a bunch of news, obviously, every time that we talk. And we were talking off mic a little bit before we went on. And if we ever did a podcast just exclusively, the two of us, I would entitle it something like It's All Politics, or Everything is Politics, or every news story, everything that we are, everything that we're going to be is linked to this political situation. But as you point out, it's almost toxic for a lot of people to even follow.
It is, especially as we get more and more violence, more gun shootings, more protests, and then demonstrations, riots. The National Guard called out, and politicians basically viciously attacking each other. Jim Jordan, Mitch McConnell, Rachel Maddow stoking the fire. It's just a conflagration out there. And some of my friends who are political scientists will not watch the news on TV. They'll read it carefully and they're well informed. But they say their blood pressure gets up too high when they watch all this stuff on TV. So your podcast is different because you can sit back and relax and listen to it and turn it off and then turn it back on again if your blood pressure is going up too high. Maybe today the blood pressure is going to go up, George.
Well, we'll see about that. And you make an excellent point there. A lot of people think that they're watching news when they watch these cable television shows in the evening. You're not. You're watching entertainment. And the point of it is when these people get sued, and I think about Rush Limbaugh was the first one to say this, but also Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity, and I don't know if Rachel Maddow has expressed this as such, but when they get sued, when they get in trouble, they'll be the first to step back and say, whoa, 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 whoa. This stuff isn't news. This is entertainment. Unfortunately, a lot of my viewers, a lot of my listeners don't understand that. But believe me, I'm an entertainer, so I like to think of myself as a news guy.
You are, but I would say you also are very sensible in terms of being knowledgeable. You do have a point of view. There's no question about it. I try to kind of correct you when I can, when I think you're going off the deep end.
Just like a student.
But the thing is that, people do want things to be interesting, and that is, I guess, entertainment. So, there's not much objective news left.
Let's get to some topics here, and we're going to start on a very serious one, and we're going to interweave this political perspective on everything. We got a ton of them, so these are almost quick hitters. But Dateline Indianapolis now from the Associated Press. A gunman killed 8 people, wounded several others before apparently taking his own life in a late-night attack at a FedEx facility near the Indianapolis airport, police said, and the latest in a spate of mass shootings in the United States after a relative lull during the pandemic. Who would have thought it would have taken a pandemic to have a lull in mass shootings? It was the latest in a recent string of mass shootings across the United States. Last month, 8 people were fatally shot at massage businesses across the Atlanta area. 10 died in gunfire at a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado. Okay, Doc, politically speaking now, Biden's got some kind of a proposal out there to try to rein this in a little bit. Is there any political solution to this? Can we help this situation along? Do you see any political solution?
Gun control, try it. It's not going to work. What guns are you going to take away? A lot of these shootings actually do not involve so-called assault rifles, the MR-15s or things like that. And a pistol, I have a pistol in my New Hampshire place that has a magazine that holds 21 bullets. And it has a soft trigger. I don't shoot people. I shoot targets, and I have it, I enjoy that. but everybody is armed. And apparently, when you're angry at your boss, you got fired, you had some disagreement with your coworkers. In America, the solution to your problem is you go and kill them.
Yeah.
And that's very rare. I mean, there are a few countries in the world, Afghanistan, Venezuela and others, where people have done that. But in the United States, this has become a real epidemic. And to be honest with you, I don't think there is much support for gun regulations. And in some cases, if you had the regulations, it wouldn't have helped, because some of these people are people who have mental problems, who have rage and anger problems, and who regulations would not have stopped them from doing what they're doing.
Well,
I mean, in Japan, people don't have guns, so you don't see a lot of people getting killed with guns. In the United States, we have 2 or 3 guns for every single American, and that's not going to go away.
Well, okay, and that's one of the points. I thought I had a bright idea for a while, and then I realized maybe it wasn't so bright. But as you mentioned, the country is awash in guns, and I said, you can't take them away. That's why people got them, so that they can't be taken away, basically. Those guns are out there, and I tell people not every gun owner like you is a nut. Not every gun owner is a nut, but every nut now owns a gun in this country. But what I thought was, if you go back through history, everybody from Lee Harvey Oswald to Dylan Roof and beyond, those guys are using new guns. They're buying new weapons. Mostly they have to buy them themselves. They can't get them from friends and relatives, because friends and relatives know that they're nuts. So I thought maybe we could address this by just restricting the sale of new guns, because there's plenty of used ones to go around for everybody. But of course, then we come into politics, then we come into political donors, then we come into the gun lobby and the manufacturers, and that probably is never going to work. You're never going to restrict the sale of new guns, because that's where the money is for the big corporations. So I kind of resigned myself to thinking that's a dumb idea.
But I can go down to the Iowa State Fairgrounds when they have a gun show.
Yeah.
And I can walk in, and there are all these people with tables with all these firearms, and they've got the lock guards on the trigger guards, so you can't pick them up and start shooting those guns. But you don't have to have a whole lot of proof of anything to buy those guns. I can go into a pawn shop, even in a place like Ames, and they've got guns for sale. We're awash in guns, and how to stop all this is a dilemma that someone much smarter than I would have to address, and I'm very pessimistic about it. I mean, we're the Wild West. We're the Wild West.
They did have success buying them back in Australia to a certain extent, but I don't see that working here. A buyback program, is that going to work?
No, it isn't going to work. And remember, everything in the United States is dominated by federalism. So we have gun laws in different states, and we have gun laws in different cities. So you can buy back all the guns in Manhattan, but people right across the border in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, I mean, Massachusetts has one of the strictest gun laws in the country. And yet across the border, New Hampshire is like Iowa. You can buy any gun you want. I went to a coffee place. I go there frequently when I'm in New Hampshire. And there are dudes who walk in with guns hanging from their waist, looking like an old Western movie.
Okay, so, and that's exactly right. And that dovetails into the next story, which is very serious also. Now, this is Dateline Chicago. Disturbing body cam video released after public outcry over the Chicago police shooting of a 13-year-old boy shows the youth appearing to drop a handgun and begin raising his hands less than a second before an officer fires his gun and kills him. We've got the situation up in Minneapolis that everybody's aware of. We've got the situation across America with policing and guns. Politically, number one, is there any solution to this? Can we mitigate the harm that's being done politically? And then secondly, I want to tell people this. They look at this and they say, what the hell's wrong with cops? What's happening out there? Well, I'll tell you. My perspective is there's huge militarism in the police forces. We're hiring people directly out of the military that are coming out of combat. They're getting priority hiring. Those are people that are staffing our police departments. They are not trained to mitigate and peacefully resolve issues. Escalation's a real problem. But to what the doc was just talking about, the other part of it is everyone's got a gun now, and the cops know that. And I want to tell you something. Having talked to my friends that have been in combat, even being I was in the street in a fight one time, and a guy had a gun, and I know what this sensation is like.
Right.
People think that the police are protectors of us, society. Yes, they are. They're the protectors of the fellow officers in blue. Yes, they are. But when a gun is suspected to be in play, it's then all about me as a police officer. It's all about survival. And that's what's happening. The proliferation and the availability of these guns, everyone that they're encountering, they know there's a likelihood they've got a gun. That didn't used to be the case, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the situations that we're seeing around the country. It's the damn guns.
Well, you do. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely right. You know, if you're a cop and there was gunfire, you were called to the scene at 2:00 in the morning in Chicago. You got two kids, you try to arrest them, they get out of the car and take off down a very dark and scary looking alley. And one of them seems to be carrying a gun. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be a cop. I think being a cop is a very dangerous profession, and also one in which, a lot of police feel that if they don't use the gun, it's going to be used on them, as you said. It's a terrible dilemma, and how we solve it. Defund the police, really?
Well, that's a little bit of a misnomer.
Defund the police?
Yeah.
Look what happened in Minneapolis when they began to restrain the police in Minneapolis. I saw the statistic just recently. The rate of violence in Minneapolis, crime has just blown out of proportion because the cops in Minneapolis, now that's not true in the suburb, apparently, where this latest shooting took place. But in Minneapolis, the cops don't want to go out and do anything because they know that they're the bad guys now. And it's a horrible dilemma. I mean, if you've ever lived in a third world country, this is familiar, I mean, I grew up in Colombia as a young kid, and I had a gun under my bed. My mom had a gun. My dad had a gun. We had guns up on our ranch up in the Andes Mountains. Why? Because of the number of kidnappings, violence, bandits, guerrillas, lawlessness was all over the place. And the police in my hometown in Colombia, if they used their gun and fired it, they had to pay for the bullet. So they never shot anybody. They didn't want to pay for that bullet. So you were on your own. You had bars on your windows. We had private security that went around our neighborhood. All the neighbors paid for this. And the guy drove around on his bicycle and he had a gun and was looking out for things. But, in third world countries, this is pretty familiar. But God forbid, that we should descend into this kind of thing.
I kind of think that we have in a lot of respects. And I got to say that defund police thing, that's one of those code words. The media has to bear some responsibility in that. It's a right. Bad word. They're not wanting to defund police, except maybe in Portland, maybe. I don't know. But the point of it is they want to demilitarize. They want to change the approach. They want to politically try to do something to get people in the police departments to be more problem solvers and less, in these armed confrontations.
Sure.
But we're running out of time.
Look, the latest shooting in Minneapolis, I watched it many times. I watch too much TV and I don't sleep well because it's too much. They had this kid, they stopped him. They realized that he had a criminal record. There was a warrant out for him. There was something about, violence against women. There was a gun thing. He had a deodorizer hanging from his rearview mirror, which I still don't understand. They have a law in Minnesota. You're not allowed to hang anything from your rearview mirror. What a bunch of stupid legislators. If any of you from Minnesota are listening to me, you're a bunch of idiots. You pass laws all day long that can't be enforced, that make no sense. I have a handicap sticker that hangs from my rear view mirror. Where the hell am I supposed to put that in Minnesota? If I drive up, I'm not driving up to the Twin Cities ever again. But so they have this kid. He gets out of the car. One cop goes up and tries to handcuff him. You watch that video, and the cop is a complete incompetent who should be fired because he couldn't figure out how to put the handcuffs on the kid. So he's bungling around. He hands the handcuffs to someone behind him who is another cop, and the kid breaks loose from him. This guy's a big cop. He should have been able to hang on to that kid. The kid breaks loose, gets in the car. The police officer who was there training some people supposedly goes berserk and pulls out either the wrong gun. Instead of a taser, she pulls out her handgun, or she was just being a cowgirl. You know, I am a cowgirl. I got my gun here, and by God, I'm going to use it. And there's another cop that's shown in the video standing there, and he's laughing. Watch that video. He's laughing while she pulls that gun out and shoots the kid. Come on, people. You know, we need good training. We need discipline. We need much more professional law enforcement action. This shouldn't happen. And then I will add, a lot of kids out there shouldn't be owning guns and doing bad stuff.
Well, that's true.
Because if there's no warrant out on you and your license plates are in good shape and stuff, you should be okay.
But it shouldn't be.
If you resist the police, then then there's real trouble. So
there is trouble, but it shouldn't be a death sentence. And you're exactly right.
Not.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time here. I did want to get to one thing that's purely political here that I wanted to talk to you about, and I wanted to tap your expertise and knowledge on this area because we're talking about trying to solve some things politically. Well, the Democrats in Congress want to be able to take control, and they basically, the way things are right now, they don't have control. But here's something that I found interesting. Democrats in the House and Senate just Thursday introduced that legislation that's been coming to expand the number of seats on the U.S. Supreme Court from 9 to 13. A proposal hailed by progressive advocacy groups is a critical step in combating the conservative takeover of the high court and protecting key constitutional rights. And you could enumerate any number of them. But Citizens United might be the top of the list as to something they would like to unwind by changing the seats on the Supreme Court. Is there a likelihood that this could happen? And what do you think of it?
Bad idea. I mean, FDR tried to do it, and they said, nah, we don't want to go there. The Republicans could have done this when the Supreme Court was a very liberal left-wing Supreme Court, or at least a progressive Supreme Court. They didn't do it. Yes, it's true that the Supreme Court has had different numbers. It's had 10 at one time, but you don't want to do that for the same reason that you don't want to have Congress cancel the outcome of the 2nd District election in Iowa and give it to the Democrat. It politicizes things in a way that's unnecessary. And my own view is that more and more we may be ignoring the rulings of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court took over its power to declare things legal or constitutional or not. That's not in the Constitution. The Constitution does not give the Supreme Court that power. They took that themselves with a Supreme Court case. And so the legitimacy of having 9 people who are nominated and appointed for the rest of their life is a weird idea in the first place. And I think that at some point we may have some reforms where the Supreme Court is not a lifetime job. Ask the Iowa legislature about tenure. The Supreme Court has tenure forever. And we may want to have a bipartisan discussion about that. Allow the court to be more fluid, to adapt more to the changing values of the country, because the country does change. I think this Supreme Court, that while it's conservative, Democrats shouldn't be so afraid of it, because generally Supreme Court justices, even if they are liberal or conservative, try very hard to listen to the country, to do things that are outside of what is expected that they will do. And so work with the court, pass legislation that is not unconstitutional, and you'll be okay.
Well, last story coming up, and we're out of time. I wanted to get, I appreciate your take on that, but this was a Associated Press story, Dateline Washington. And it reads, one by one, the Republican leaders of Congress have made the trip to Mar-a-Lago to see Donald Trump. Kevin McCarthy visited after the deadly January 6th Capitol insurrection, counting on the former president's help to win back control of the House in 2022. The chair of the Senate Republican Campaign Committee, Rick Scott, stopped by to enlist Trump in efforts to regain the Senate. Lindsey Graham's gone golfing down there. Mitch McConnell isn't going to show up anytime soon because they pretty much have expressed their hatred for one another. But the question for you, Doc, again, politically, is Trump coming back? I mean, is he coming back in 2024? Is a proxy of his coming back in 2024? Or my greatest fear is, are the Republicans going to become more politically astute and get someone that's just as right and maybe further right than Donald Trump to come in here and run for president in 2024? What's going to happen, do you think?
My own view, just looking at the divisions inside the Republican Party, is that there are a lot of Republicans who want to run for president in 2024. They're not real excited about the idea of just conceding it to Donald Trump. Number two, I don't think Donald Trump is going to want to get back into that swamp in Washington and have all the stuff thrown at him that he did. His business interests have been damaged. His reputation worldwide has been destroyed. There are prosecutions going on against him all over the place. And I think that the Republicans are going to have to work their way through this. I'm not sure that Donald Trump still has the kind of magnetic authority that he had for 4 years. Even for getting people to vote for Republicans in the 22 off-year elections. I think you see a lot of Republicans, paying their respect to him, but then moving on. And even Senator Scott basically scolded President Trump for attacking Mitch McConnell. He said, "No, I don't agree with that." Because after all, Mitch McConnell is there for the next 8 years in the Senate as the most powerful individual.
Pending health.
And you don't want to mess with Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
And Scott, even if he were to, Scott would like to run for president. Ted Cruz would like to run for president. Governor Nome would like to run for president. There are all these Republicans that are, chafing at the bit, as we say in the horse business, wanting to run for that thing. And Donald Trump, for them, is more a threat and an obstacle than some, wonderful positive thing. So I think you're going to see the selfishness of politics and the ambition of politicians work its way out more than the magic of Donald Trump. He still has a lot of support from people, but I think when you look at polls and other indicators, voters are kind of looking at other stuff.
Yeah, and the political duopoly, it's really, it boils down to the cult of personality to a certain extent, like you mentioned, but mostly each party will do anything almost to avoid the other party to take over the White House and the branches of government and have control. And that's what it's all about. And if it means Donald Trump, it means Donald Trump. If it means, a Nancy Pelosi on the other side, it's hard to believe that people follow her, but they do. That type of thing, they'll do it just to keep that other party from taking power. Well, Doc, we're out of time.
And yet, at the same time, those two parties and those polar opposites have internal divisions that are pretty serious and pretty deep, too.
Yeah, and the Republican Party could split. I'd love to see that happen only in this context. I'd like to see that so that the Democratic Party could split, so that a left wing could actually become active, so that the party could actually move to the left to embrace a disinfected portion that would have the confidence to do that because the right is doing it. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Doc, we're completely, next time I'm going to find just one topic and we'll talk just about that, because there's no way that you and I can talk about, 10 things like this. But I really appreciate you giving it the best effort here today. Thanks again for coming on a podcast by George.
I'm always happy to be on with you. It's always interesting, exciting, and my blood pressure is way up again.
That's great. I hope our viewers like it as well. I don't want to become cable television, but that's really where it's at. Doc, we'll see you again. Thanks for coming on. We'll revisit here maybe, I'm thinking in a week or two per normal. But that's going to do it for now. That's going to wrap it up, folks. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.